Greetings programs, Burnt Out Gamer. For this video, I want to bring to you guys my personal top 5 NES games in my collection. So let's go check it out. Alright, first up on the list, Double Dragon. Now this was my first forte into anything side-scroller and beat 'em up, and I'm going to tell you, either with alone or with a friend, this game is a blast. Released in '87 in the arcade, it didn't come home to the NES until '88, and this started my love of all things beat 'em up. I would play hours and hours of this game, just trying to figure out the tricks, the tips, the strategies, the best way to defeat the bosses and the enemies. I mean, I didn't really think about it that way as a kid. I just wanted to beat the game and just had a blast playing it. Still, to this day, I love this game. It did also include a two-player, like, versus mode, I guess you could say, where you were in this arena and there was random weapons and knives laying on the ground that you and your friend could like square off against, which is pretty cool. We never really spent a lot of time doing that as a kid, but still just having that option just to go in there and, you know, fuck around, it was also, you know, pretty awesome. And, you know, being an NES game, that's kind of uncommon, honestly. There's so many little things that just got started back then that you really didn't think about that, you know, today are very commonplace. And I think that's pretty cool, honestly. All right, people. Number 4 on this list, Maniac Mansion. Now, I don't even know really where to start with this one. It was released on the NES in 1990. For that, it was a computer game, that point-and-click adventure, which is what it was on the NES. But I had never played a game like this until I randomly discovered it in an issue of Nintendo Power. Actually, this issue of Nintendo Power. When I got this one, I could not believe that these kind of games existed because I had never seen anything like them before. So you start the game by picking your random squad of guys, and to me, looking back, it kind of has like a Resident Evil type feel, only much wackier, obviously, with tentacles and the weird dark humor. But exploring a mansion, not knowing where things are, collecting things to solve puzzles, I mean, it really brought a whole new aspect of gameplay to me. I'd never really played a game that was open world like this. I mean, Legend of Zelda and those kind of games had an open world in it, but this, it just really, you gave no direction as to where you were supposed to go or what you were supposed to do. You just kind of had to keep figuring it out as you went along. And it was such a weird game. I mean, so drastically different than anything I'd ever been playing. I remember even my mom got interested, you know, sitting on the couch as I like took over the TV to play this. She would be sitting there watching and asking me questions, and actually started to help me like get through some of the puzzles and figure things out. And, you know, she thought it was kind of funny, and she actually helped me through some of these different areas of it, I guess you could say, if you want to call them areas. But yeah, it was a very unique feel to me, and you know, to this day, I still love making playthroughs for it, just because it's just so oddball. It can't help but just stick out. And you know, when I was starting my collection, I knew I needed to have this one in it. All right, guys, for number 3 on my list of my top 5 NES games in my collection is Star Trek, the 25th anniversary. So, I love Star Trek. I grew up on it, all the movies, all the TV shows. Now, the original series was obviously before my time, but I did grow up on The Next Generation, which bridged into, you know, Deep Space Nine and Voyager and, you know, so forth and so on. So, even though this had Kirk and Spock and the original crew and the original Enterprise, I was still quite familiar with it all, just, from all the movies. And when this game was released in 1992, I knew I had to have it. I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I knew that I had to have it. Now, to my surprise, when I actually started playing it, it turned out to be kind of a deep puzzle game. Now, you choose your crew, from the main bridge crew or even red shirts to whatever mission you're about to go on, which you traveled planet to planet. And the whole idea is that you were thrown far from space, far from Federation space, and you were all out of dilithium, which then you needed to go through the different planets, solve the puzzles, scavenge whatever dilithium you could have or find, and then make your way back home. And, from going to the different planets to even going back in time, it really did capture a lot of the old school Star Trek feel, and it was quite fun. You could even use, phaser things, but, you usually didn't need to do that. But there was a lot of random puzzles to overcome, and it was pretty deep, and it was pretty awesome. It stuck with me to where, I kept playing it over and over again. And then actually I got my own copy from a video store that when Genesis and Super Nintendo were really starting to take over, they had to clear out a lot of their old NES stock. So they just had tons and tons of games that were on sale super cheap. And when I saw this one, I had to have it. And been in my collection ever since. All right, guys, for number 2 on my list, this is where things started to get a little bit tricky for me. I didn't want to just throw any heavy hitters out there, all the heavy hitters, but honestly, this game just made too much of an impact on my childhood, and that's Super Mario Bros. 3. Now, I had originally planned on Super Mario Bros. 2, but I just couldn't get past the fact that this game ruled my childhood. And there's not really a lot that hasn't been said about this game, so I figured I would just share a personal story with you guys about my experience with Mario Bros. 3. Now, a friend of mine got the very first copy of Super Mario Bros. 3, or so we believed. He had won a Nintendo Power contest and got a full copy of the game sent to his house before the actual release. So as kids, we all assumed that this was the first copy of Super Mario Bros. 3 ever out there. And I remember being so excited when I went over to his house that day and saw that bright yellow box. I had no idea that it was that close to being out, or, had heard anything really about it. I didn't know Mario could fly. I didn't know about all the new power-ups, all that stuff. I was just completely taken aback. And I wish I could go back in time and kind of find out more details, because all I really know is that we had a copy of it before it was out in stores, and going to school and showing it off and everyone being amazed that he had it. And the funny thing is that his Nintendo was actually broken at the time, so anytime he wanted to play it, he had to come to my house, which was awesome for me because then that meant I got to play it all the time. And like I said, I wish I could remember more details about it. I just know that, we had that copy before anybody, and it was absolutely awesome. We also couldn't believe, after watching The Wizard, which was, just a giant promotional tool for Nintendo, but still completely awesome to this day, that the secrets it showed with that warp whistle. And immediately after watching it, we ran to the Nintendo, loaded up Super Mario Bros. 3, and tried it out as fast as we could. And sure enough, it turned out to be true. So it was just so cool, the whole experience of that, being able to play it before anyone else did, having all that, because, it's Mario Bros. 3. It's one of the best platformers ever made out there of all time. So that's number 2, guys. All right, programs. For the grand finale of my top 5 games in my collection, it's none other than Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. Now, it was always going to be either The Legend of Zelda or The Adventures of Link. as the number one spot. And I kept going back and forth, back and forth. And I finally settled on this one simply because I just loved the game. Now, I loved the original Legend of Zelda. I played that over and over and over again and started speed running it and doing everything I could, in the game. But when this one came out, it just completely like changed the game for me. Now I know it is kind of the black sheep of the family, but still it has that special spot for me. I mean, everything about it I thought was awesome. The story, I remember renting this repeatedly from our local grocery store over and over and over again until my parents finally just said, might as well just save money and buying the game instead of constantly renting it. And I put so many hours into this game. Funny thing is I only beat it recently. I mean, it's such a hard game, and the way the setup is, it just kind of completely starts you from the beginning to where you have to run all the way back if you don't have the lives, and if you actually stop and it resets all your experience points back to zero, no matter if you're up there or not. I mean, there is a lot of flaws in the game, but I mean, that kind of gives a character to me, actually, and kind of ups the challenge. I mean, it is way easier playing this game on, like, the NES Mini, where, you have save states. You can just come back to it, and pick up right where you left off. But back in the day, we didn't have that. You just had to grind through and, tough shit. And I kind of miss that in some ways. I mean, it is easier now that I'm older, being able to like pick up and go, and I don't have all the free time obviously I did as a kid, but still, I mean, it really had an impact on my life. And just even the manual, you'll see, paging through it here, it had that beginning story, and it was a thick manual with all kinds of pictures and information and showing you all the different items, which is really cool looking through, because then you'd see later on stuff that you haven't got to get yourself yet, and it just kind of like, wow, that's coming up in the story, that's coming up in the game. Some of the enemies you see, and it's like, wow, those are really awesome. And then when you finally encounter them, they kick the shit out of you. But it's just such an awesome game. I recommend this game to anyone. I know it's overshadowed a lot, and like I said, the black sheep of it. But if you're a Zelda fanatic and really want to take a time warp down old memory lane, pick this game up. I strongly recommend it. So that is it, programs. I really hope you enjoyed, taking a look at all these games. I have way more content coming up about old retro stuff. That's, obviously what I'm into the most. That's what I love the most. I do new gaming, but as you can see behind me, I have a pretty big collection of old games. And, give me a like. Give me a follow. Give me comments. I want to hear from you guys, seeing what you guys want, and what you guys enjoyed. Like me, we're all in this together, and using gaming as an escape from all the stress out there in the world. So keep gaming, keep it up, show me a like, show me a follow, and I'll talk to you next time.